So one of the coolest things that happens when I'm fishing and filming is getting a piece of footage that really gives a good visual example of the things that I talk about in my videos. So you guys know I love to do videos where I break down different techniques, gear, tips, tricks on how to go out and catch fish. Well, today I have a piece of footage from a few weeks ago. It's a fish to catch that you guys saw, but I think it really warrants a complete breakdown and for me to go through and explain why I threw where I threw, why I threw the baits that I threw, how current dictated where that fish was sitting, how the time of day dictated where that fish was sitting, the weather, the water clarity, all those kinds of things. And we're going to go through this clip and we're going to break it down piece by piece by piece so you guys can get a better understanding of how a few key aspects really went into me putting that fish into the boat. So hopefully you guys will enjoy today's video. Alright guys, so let me set up the scenario for you real quick before we actually get into the clip. This is the last week of July. We've got about 82 to 83 degree water temperatures. The outside air temperature is around the same, 82 to 85 degrees. This is around 11:30 or 12 o'clock, so pretty much high noon. The sun is directly over our heads. It is bluebird sky outside. We've got current being pulled out of the lake that we're on, and we've also got current being pushed into the lake that we're on. So we've got quite a bit of current, probably a 2 to 3 mile per hour current, and then a little bit of wind as well, probably 2 to 3 miles per hour, blowing in the same direction that the current is going. So let's actually get into the clip and we'll start breaking it down, and I'll pause it along the way so we can talk about some key details as we go. So the first thing that you see here is this boat dock, and I noticed that underneath the boat dock there was actually a tree. So as you guys can see there, I made a sidearm cast, went way past the other side of the boat dock and tried to get it way past that tree. So the reason that I made the decision to do that is there's two main factors that went into that. Number one was current, and number two was the shade. So as you guys can see, that boat dock is putting off a lot of shade. There's a big block of shade right where that boat dock's at. You can see it's around 12 o'clock because that shadow is straight down on top of that boat dock. And then number two, that current. That current is actually pushing into the boat dock in the direction that we're going towards that boat dock. And so is that wind. So what that means is where that tree is at, if there's gonna be a bass, it's gonna be sitting under the boat dock in the shade, and it's gonna be hugged up to the back side of the tree, opposite direction that the current is coming. And the reason they do that is because it creates a little bit of an eddy or slack water or dead space. And it's a space that those bass can easily sit without exerting a lot of energy and come out and ambush prey when it comes by. So I made a cast past that tree to the other side of the boat dock, and as you guys can see, I kind of just quit reeling, let it sink. I set the hook. So really what happened there was, as soon as that bait hit the water, it fell on the other side of that tree, and as soon as I pulled it up to that tree, that bass ate it. I could literally feel it get on the limb of the tree, and then I felt the bass tick tick, and he ate it off the limb of that tree. So what that tells me is, yes, that bass was sitting on the back side of that tree in that shade, in that place that I knew he should be sitting, because the current and the sunlight kind of dictated those two things. That bass wanted to be in the shade, and it wanted to be tucked up against that tree where it could easily ambush some prey. So now that I've actually set the hook on this fish, I've got this fish stuck, there are a few key details on actually fighting the fish and the rod, reel, and line choice that I chose to throw the bait on that I did that helped me to get that fish out of that cover and into the boat. So actually fighting the fish. So let's back it up here just a little bit right before I actually set the hook on the fish, and you guys will see as soon as I hit that fish, I never take pressure off of it. You'll actually hear me say in the background, I gotta get this fish out of here first. I gotta get her out of here first. And it's because I knew as soon as I hit her, she ran down deeper into that tree that she was sitting in trying to get away from me. So she was probably going deeper into the tree, and then she was gonna shoot out for deep water and try to get away with the bait that she had just ate, and just trying to get away from me in general. So one very key thing is when you hit those bigger than average fish, and a lot of the times when it's fish 4 pounds and above, they're just a little bit stronger, they're a little bit more instinctual. I wouldn't say they're smarter, but their instincts are just a little bit more honed than those younger, smaller fish, and they know how to get away from you and break you off. I mean, it's just part of fighting those bigger than average fish. So when I actually hit that fish, I'm never letting tension off that fish. I'm grinding on it, keeping it coming towards me so that I can get its head turned, coming out of that cover and get the momentum to get that fish out of that cover and into the boat with me. And that's really where the rod and reel and line help me out tremendously. Having the right gear when it comes to situations like this is really a lot of the times what puts fish into the boat. So let's actually break down the rod, the reel, the line, and the bait real quick so that you guys can kind of get a better understanding of that. So the rod that I'm using, 7.5 foot G-Rod Pro Bass. It's a medium heavy, so a 7 foot 6 inch medium heavy rod. Very important on the medium heavy action and the little bit longer rod. So the rod does two things for me. Number one, it helps me to throw this bait. This is the big 8-inch Blue Anaconda, and I'm throwing a 1/2 ounce weight on there, so it's a little bit bigger bait, a little bit heavier bait. So that little bit bigger rod allows me to have more control of that, make those more accurate casts like I did to actually get that bait up under that boat dock and just have control of the bait overall. And then that 7.5 foot medium heavy rod is just a little bit stouter and a little bit longer than say a 7 or a 7.3 medium heavy rod. And that backbone shuts off at about the second guide up from the reel seat, so it means it has a little more power, a little more backbone, so when I do hit those fish and they take me into that cover, I've got that power to really kind of, you know, put it on that rod and put it on that fish to start to draw them out of that cover. Now the reel is very important too in combination with the line. So I'm actually throwing 17-pound P line, so a little bit heavier line. It allows me to have a little more abrasion resistance, a little more strength, so that when you do get in those situations where they wrap you around a boat dock post or into a tree or something like that, you don't have to worry about that line breaking. Honestly, if I was fishing 10 to 12 in that situation, I would have probably never got him out of that tree and I'd have broke that fish off. And then the reel, 7:1 gear ratio. Really quick reel. So what that means is I can pick that line up, I can keep that tension on that fish, I can get that fish's head turned, get them coming to me, get that momentum to get that fish into the boat. And then once they break free of that cover, a lot of the times they'll come out of the cover, you know, flailing around or tail walking, and you got to keep that reel going and pick up all that line so that that fish gets no leverage on you and you keep all the leverage on the fish and actually get them into the boat. Now for the bait choice, my bait choice was the big blue worm, and really when it comes to this worm, it can resemble a myriad of things, but for me, that blue color, that bigger profile, even though it doesn't look like a gizzard shad, to a bass's simple brain, its instincts tell it that's just a big meal. It's an injured bait fish or an injured something, and to me a big 8-inch blue worm looks a lot like an injured bait fish. So I'm sure when that bait come over the backside of that tree and I pulled it up to that tree, that bass just took the opportunity to eat this slow moving big meal and probably just thought it was a big shad or something like that, and that's really the reason that he ate it when it come past that tree. So now that I've actually got that fish out of that tree, you guys can see that fish starts to dive and try to run away from the boat. When Dad tried to net it, it ran away from the net. And really that's where your rod, reel, line, they're kind of all coming into play. And that's really where you start to come into play. In situations like this with a bigger fish, I like to keep my thumb on the thumb bar so that I can click it open and thumb drag that fish if I need to. I kind of start to bend with the fish, follow the fish with the rod. A lot of the times you'll see guys that'll fight fish really dramatically, and sometimes when it comes to bigger fish, those are real movements that those guys, and even me, I'm trying to do to keep that fish hooked, keep them kind of coming in the direction that I want them to come. And all those things kind of play in. You'll start to see the more fish that you catch, kind of, they have some telltale signs that they're either going to run a certain way or they're going to come up to the top and jump. You kind of start to learn all those things. And as you guys can see here, that fish runs away from that net. I immediately kind of roll that rod and get them coming back in the other direction and use the power of that rod to get them to go where I want them to and pick him up, put him in the net. I've got the fish in the boat. The fish is caught, and you know, high fives and picture taking and all that kind of stuff, and a 4-pounder is into the boat, which is really, really cool. And honestly guys, that is how I kind of break down that fish catch. That is the things that were really key factors: the shade, the time of day, the current, the wind direction, the weather itself, the rod, the reel, the line, the bait, the weight. All of those things become a factor, especially when you hook big fish. And you know, I'm not saying go out and buy the setup that I was using. Don't go out and buy the baits I'm using. I only use these as suggestions. You guys can see they catch fish. You know, that's equipment that I trust with putting big fish into the boat. But I'm just saying, when you're thinking about the decisions you're going to make, think about every single cast. Think about the rod, the reel, the line choice. Make sure that your knots are good. Make sure that your baits are hooked the right way. Make sure that all those little key details are in line, so that when you do hook a 4, a 5, a 6, a 10, 11, a fish of a lifetime, that fish is going to come into the boat, and that nothing that was under your control and under your power is in a way that it can break or malfunction, because when you have done everything that you can to make sure that fish comes into the boat, 99% of the time, I can promise you, you're going to put a big fish or even a fish of a lifetime into the boat with you guys. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please go leave them in the comment section down below. If you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell to let you guys know when I put out all of my videos. Also, go down in the description. I'll have links to the rod, reel, line, bait, everything that I was using in today's video. But as always, you guys are sweet, and thank you for watching.